Freedom Denied and Dignity Withheld. A presentation by Anabel Pinto, Brett Schafer, and Alexa Scott.
In our world today, many people of the same beliefs come together to form what is known as a religion. Some religions dominate the masses, while others are much, much smaller. For example, the Church of Scientology is a smaller organized religion, however growing. The concentration of this religion is spread across the world, but mainly focused in Southern California. Even there, its numbers are small. In many countries where a certain religion dominates, the Church of Scientology fails to make its place. On October 17, 2017, about 50 Hungarian police officers surrounded the official Church of Scientology. Their reasoning was that the church was linked to suspected criminals and a serious investigation. Contrarily, the people of the church noted that it was a religious suppression under the guise of data protection. Many now stand together in hopes for a better future by coming together in peaceful protests. They claim that this would be a strategic way to undermine the ideals of their church and effectively would impede any authority this religious affiliation may have in any way. This claim may be true because of Scientology's current position in Hungarian society. It is not treated as an official religion, but still given the tax benefits of a charitable organization. This event, even if either side were correct in their accusations, demonstrates an act of injustice. This violates the basic right to religion in our world, something that many find their own freedoms in. If the government were correct, they would still be using their authority for corruption. They find a critical point in the structure of their government that would warrant them to do such an act, then act upon it. They do not value the right to religion. Otherwise, they would acknowledge the group in a much more respectful manner. If the Church of Scientology were correct, the entirety of the situation would be much more surface level in terms of violation. It does not matter which side is correct, but how their practice of religion is tolerated. The Hungarian government refuses to acknowledge the legitimacy of their religion, which allows the government to treat them as if they were a lower, knowingly so. As a people, we are called together to find a balance between government and religion, as well as to find a solution for problems that arise such as these. On January 8, 2018, VTech, a toymaker company based in Hong Kong and purposed for kids, was charged with keeping unauthorized data on children open to hackers. What they did challenged the 1998 Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. After being accused, they settled the charges with $6,500,000. Though this extremely successful company alleviated the situation with money, their loss had little impact and no real consequences for the act of injustice toward thousands of families. Thankfully, the FTC, known as the Federal Trade Commission, was quick to jump onto the problem and put an end to it. This problem could have been solved from the start. Thanks to unpreparedness, many families now struggle with the fact that their private information is available to hackers. This example violates a person's right to privacy in several ways. Firstly, the parents were not guided nor given instruction to how their information would be secured. Back to the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, VTech lacked the need for parental permission in order to use their devices. This means that there were no restrictions that would have stopped the children using their products from accessing the internet. As our technology advances, Maureen K. Olson claims it's more important than ever that companies let their parents know how their kids' data is collected and used, and that they might take reasonable steps to secure that data. Secondly, the company lacked the necessary protection in order to secure their stored information. In our world today, being prone to hacked is and can be one of the biggest demises of a company. Understanding the reality of hacking today is necessary for success. Both of these reasons, unfortunately, affected many who now have to struggle with this reality. The right to privacy is understanding that each individual has the fundamental right to their own property and that publicizing that information infringes upon that right. Ultimately, this company denied the consumers their basic right to privacy in society. Because of that, their information has been stolen and is still available to be so. We are called as a people to bring light to this subject. It is our responsibility as a people to defend both our and others' rights to privacy, as it is a necessity for living a just life.
The next basic social freedom is the right to fair trial and due process. The right to fair trial and due process creates a balance between a person's right to fair treatment and the power of the law. This right is the foundation for equality throughout the justice system. A lack of this right creates an imbalance of power and therefore leads to injustice and oppression. The Equal Justice Initiative is a private, non-profit organization committed to protecting the basic human rights of those who are most vulnerable in American society, particularly in the criminal justice system. On December 6, 2017, the organization released a report titled "Supreme Court Declines to Address Death Penalty Racial Bias." The report details the Supreme Court's decision to not review a capital case in Alabama where prosecutors illegally excluded black people from jury service. Prosecutors tagged each African American juror summoned to court by placing a B, meaning black, next to their name on the list of jurors, and then excluded 90% of them during jury selection for the capital trial. Especially since this particular event took place during a capital trial, the government attempted to harm an individual without following the correct legal actions. By not adhering to the law, the person being tried was not given their right to a fair trial, meaning that they were not getting an equal chance at justice and freedom. Similarly, the individuals who were excluded from jury service were not given the same opportunity to participate in our country's legal process as the jury members who are not African American. This exclusion creates an imbalance of power in our country's justice system, and it allows certain groups of people to have more power in not only the criminal justice system, but also in our everyday society, because they have more say in decisions of who will be charged with crimes. The next right is the freedom of assembly/association. This means the freedom to meet both in public or in private to plan actions and/or discuss issues. In a recent trial, a former police officer from St. Louis was found not guilty of the first-degree murder of Anthony Lamar Smith. Prosecutors claimed that the officer, quote, executed Smith following a car chase and then planted a gun in his car. The former officer maintained that Smith reached for the gun and that he shot Smith in self-defense. Protests were held on the 6th anniversary of Smith's death to protest the not guilty verdict. After a full day of peacefully marching, the organizers of the protest were heard congratulating those in attendance for keeping the demonstrations peaceful. After a 6-minute die-in, organizers asked those in attendance to return home and begin the protest again the next afternoon. Despite this, a small group remained, and after rising tensions due to the arrival of police in riot gear, the protests turned violent and many people were arrested. Although this was only a small group of protesters who were not part of the larger group, this was what was publicized, and it became the entire narrative of the protest, despite the fact that the protest would not have taken place if a man had not been killed by a police officer. Without the right to assembly, voices in society are not heard. It is hard to be heard and make change with just a single voice, but when voices join together with a common goal, the chances of making change greatly increase. Preventing people from gathering publicly or privately prevents them from having their voices heard, and can contribute to oppression. In this particular example, protesters were drawing attention to the abusive power of police officers. Since police officers are already given lots of power in our society, if voices that are drawing attention to officers having too much power are silenced, then police officers will continue to have increasing and unlimited power. This immense power will lead to an imbalance and therefore oppression to other people in society.
Freedom of speech in the press means that the government cannot punish or retaliate upon people or organizations due to what they say or write, except in certain circumstances, such as false statements aimed to damage a person's reputation, threats to commit a crime, fighting words that are likely to lead to an immediate fight, not including political statements that offend others, extreme obscenity, and child pornography. In the United States, the Supreme Court has ruled that people are protected against all government officials, including federal, state, local, legislative, executive, and judicial branches. The freedom of speech and press entails talking, writing, printing, broadcasting, internet access, and other forms of media, as well as symbolic expressions, including displaying and burning flags and religious symbols. One oppression among the freedom of speech and the press is the restriction and total control of all press in Myanmar, known as Burma. The government owns and controls all daily papers and radio, and the country's 3 television channels. The media may not hint at or report any anti-governmental sentiments, and the few privately owned publications must have their content approved by the Press Scrutiny Board before it is published, preventing all daily publications. The government took over the main internet service and satellite feed provider, and citizens have been arrested for listening to BBC or Radio Free Asia in public. Foreign journalists' entry visas are usually denied unless the government wants to showcase a political event. This oppression illustrates a lack of social freedom because it restricts the citizens of Burma from accessing news and other forms of media, and it does not allow people to report on or communicate about their own government. Because of these restrictions, media workers risk prosecution and even physical harm for even attempting to communicate about their government, military, or rebel groups to the general public. This causes independent outlets to struggle to be financially stable. Because of the restrictions upon the media and press, the majority of the citizens of Burma are usually in the dark about the political happenings of their own country, and they are persecuted for questioning what they see going on. The right to petition the government allows people to speak out against injustices and to also help change those injustices. This includes calling for change and speaking up in various different forms and platforms, both in verbally speaking and in digital mass media. One oppression upon the freedom to petition the government is the current actions of President Donald Trump on Twitter. President Trump has taken to blocking several people's Twitter accounts for tweeting him with controversial sentiments about his presidential actions and practices. For about a year, people, both celebrities and ordinary people, have been using Twitter as a public platform to call out President Trump on his controversial actions as an attempt to bring light to the situation and to draw the president's attention to address his own actions. Instead of addressing the situations that his critics have tweeted him about, President Trump has simply been blocking them, silencing their attempts to highlight his wrongdoings. This oppression causes a lack of social freedom because Trump is denying people the opportunity to talk about his controversial actions and to bring about change. By blocking his critics, Trump is not only denying them from contacting him about social and political issues, but he is also blocking them from seeing his critics' views.